With all the new music that's come out recently, I felt very inspired to give song-themed recipes another try, specifically dessert recipes. The artists that I'm going to be talking about today are some of my favorite people to listen to, and so yeah, this video is very much catered to my own music taste, aka that of a person scrolling through Tumblr in 2014. So how this works is I sifted through these people's songs trying to find either actual food references or other descriptive words or themes that could in some way be applied to a dessert. This will make more sense later. Also, I'm not sure if you've heard that All Day Vegan is now out and available with over 100 amazing recipes. Get it from your favorite online bookseller or go to a bookstore nearby and see if they have it. I'm gonna make a prediction here and say that the 1975 are going to be my most played artists on Spotify this year. I've always liked them, but beginning of the year is when I really got into them and the obsession has only grown since. There aren't many food references in their songs. Maddie really does not seem to write a lot about food, unlike another certain British singer. But that's okay, because two things did come to mind, and that was A, the line, full of soy milk and so sweet it won't offend anybody, whilst staining the pages of the nation. And B, just the song Chocolate. I mean, the only logical dessert to make here is brownies. Just brownies with a lot of chocolate. First things first, preheat your oven to 180 degrees and line an 8-inch 20cm brownie pan with wet parchment paper. Chop up the first 150 grams of chocolate and melt it whichever way you prefer. I do that using my oven. So I'm melting the chocolate in the oven, and I'm also melting the vegan butter in the oven inside a separate oven-proof bowl. You can also use the microwave for that or the stove. While that is happening, go ahead and chop up the remaining 150 grams of chocolate and set that aside to be added to the batter right before baking. Then to a large mixing bowl, add some non-dairy milk, some applesauce, and vanilla, plus some apple cider vinegar. Give that a little mix. Check up on your chocolate and butter, both should be melted by now. Once melted, add that to the wet ingredients as well, followed by some sugar. Mix it all up. Next up, add the dry ingredients. That's unsweetened cacao powder, flour, baking powder, and salt. Add your chocolate chunks now as well. I actually forgot to add them until the last second. Smooth out the top and bake your brownies for about 30 minutes. Note that the cake won't be cooked through fully when taking it out of the oven, but that's exactly how it should be. Allow the brownies to rest and cool for at least half an hour. I would actually recommend to let them set fully before, getting started on your sweet soy milk coffee. I usually never sweeten my coffee since I always use oat milk, and oat milk is super sweet naturally, but I kind of like changing it up with the soy milk for once. It is some of my better work, I have to say. Okay, moving on to cigarettes after sex. Also quite Tumblr, I would say. I find myself listening to them a lot in the fall and winter months. They've got this very cozy and sultry, almost spooky vibe about them. My favorite song being Sesame Syrup. People on the internet are conflicted about what sesame syrup means in the context of the song. Not even Genius could help me out here. Sesame flavored syrup sounds super good though. And it turns out I have a recipe for quote-unquote sesame syrup in my cookbook. There is a recipe for apricot tahini buns in the book, and the glaze that I use for that could be described as sesame syrup. It's simply just a mixture of white tahini, agave or maple syrup, a pinch of salt, and a little bit of non-dairy milk to adjust the consistency. This stuff is so good on waffles, for example. I just followed my vegan Eggo recipe here, but swapping the applesauce for mashed banana. I'm sure you're gonna ask me about that waffle iron. I will make sure to put the link to it in the description. This syrup is also insanely nice in coffee. So here's a quick recipe for a sesame latte. So I added 1 to 2 teaspoons of the sesame mixture to a heat-proof glass, together with a shot of espresso that I got from a coffee shop. I mixed up both using a milk frother, and then I just poured more hot, frothy plant milk on top. I think it's soy again. All throughout 2019 and 2020, I pretty much only listened to this next singer, which was pretty easy considering she has so much music out and her voice is just the nicest, most soothing thing on the planet. Also, food references are everywhere in Lana's songs. Peaches, cinnamon, sugar, Mountain Dew. In her song Cola, there's the famous line, "My eyes are wide like cherry pies." So here's a recipe for cherry cola pie. This cozy setup here is brought to you by my mom's kitchen. I really missed filming here. First, we need some iced cola. I didn't go for Pepsi, I opted for Cherry Coke instead, which is super nostalgic for me. Last time I drank this, I must have been 8 years old, drinking it in secret. Set the Coke aside and then get started on the dough. Inside a large mixing bowl, combine the flour, salt, and powdered sugar. Next, cut the very cold vegan butter into cubes. Transfer the butter cubes to the flour bowl and mix everything up with a fork until the butter is coated in the flour. Already tried to cut the butter into even smaller pieces with a fork? Start adding the icy liquid in 3 to 4 stages, in between of which you're going to start kneading this with your hands. Really get in there. Keep adding a little bit of the cola here and there until the dough starts to come together. Then transfer this to your surface and continue kneading. As soon as you feel the dough is coming together, stop adding any liquid. Shape this into a smooth ball of dough and cut it in half. Look at those specks of butter. That's gonna make your dough taste almost like a croissant in the end. Wrap each dough in parchment paper or cling foil and then place them into the fridge or freezer. In the meantime, make the filling. So in a small saucepan, place some frozen cherries. I did a mix of cherries and blueberries actually because I didn't have enough. Some vanilla, a little bit of the cherry coke, and sugar. Mix it all up. Bring this to a simmer over medium, letting it cook for about 5 minutes. Then mix in some cornstarch, giving that another 2 to 3 minutes until the mixture feels like a very thick jam. Preheat your oven now and grab your pie tin. On a lightly floured surface, roll out one of the pie discs until it's slightly larger than the pie tin. I would say about 3 to 5 centimeters bigger. Then roll out the second half for the top. It really helps to constantly rotate the sheet of dough. That prevents sticking. I wanted to go for a laced top, and for that you need to cut out 10 to 12 somewhat equally sized strips out of this. I made them a little long. I followed a YouTube tutorial for this next part. I will link it down below, but I also really couldn't have done this without my little sister, who understood the instructions way faster than I did. Last but not least, brush everything with some more of the cola for good measure, and then put this into the oven and allow it to bake until nice and golden brown. Allow this to cool for a bit, it's gonna be hot, and then you can dig in. Now this tastes very nice. Does it taste of cola? If you tell yourself enough, it will. But yeah, it's nice sweet pie, but not too sweet, and the crust is just amazing. I could not include Arctic monkeys in this video. Not only do they fit perfectly into the theme of Tumblr era music, but they're genuinely my favorite band. I saw them live for the first time in August, and even though I lost one of my shoes during that concert, it was still one of my favorite moments from this year. Their new album, The Car, unfortunately did not provide the food references I was hoping for. Apart from that, I do really like it, by the way. It took me a few listens to get into. Anyway, I went back in time and chose a song named after a food ingredient. Black treacle is a very British syrup, I would say. It's apparently not the exact same as molasses, although very similar. And so I went out and got the real thing from a British store that we have here in Berlin. It's full of British goodies. I decided to make some black treacle flapjacks, just because I would say it's also an incredibly British thing and so easy to make. First, lay out your baking tin with parchment paper and preheat your oven to 180 degrees Celsius. Then grab a medium to large saucepan and add vegan butter, brown sugar, some of the treacle, which is, just like the song says, insanely sticky. Allow everything to melt together over medium, and then mix in the oats, plus some salt and baking powder. Mix it well, add a bit of non-dairy milk here as well. And then you can transfer this to your baking tin, smoothing out the top. Allow the bars to bake in the oven for about 30 minutes. Let them cool completely, and then you can slice them up and serve. The syrup has quite an intense flavor, which you're going to notice in those bars, definitely. But I like it. They taste especially nice with a cold glass of oat milk. Okay, at last, let me introduce you to this next cake. A bejeweled, cheap rosé and lavender cake. I listened to Midnights intensely as soon as it came out, and there are really mostly just drink references in this album. Liquor, champagne, cheap wine, cheap rosé. When it comes to food, Taylor gives us just a quick mention of peppermint candy, honey, and lavender, of course. Unlike the Lana pie, this cake actually 100% tastes like both lavender and rosé. Get started by preheating your oven to 180 degrees and gathering your cake tins. I went out and got the cheapest rosé I could find. Add some of that to a large mixing bowl together with some sugar, some melted vegan butter, vanilla, and applesauce. Give this a good mix, and then add the flour, some salt, and baking powder. Then combine everything until smooth and divide the batter evenly between the 3 cake molds. Bake these for 20 to 25 minutes or until lightly golden brown. Next, put together a super quick lavender syrup to infuse the cakes with. All you gotta do for that is bring dried lavender flowers, some lemon juice, a syrup of your choosing, and some water up to a quick boil inside a small saucepan. Then allow everything to simmer for 2 to 3 minutes before letting it sit for at least 5 minutes. We're basically making very strong, very sweet tea here. Sift the flowers through a small strainer and then use that mixture to cover the baked cakes. Do both sides. And then move on to the rosé buttercream. Inside a big bowl and using an electric hand mixer, I whipped together the room temperature vegan butter that I cut into cubes beforehand until it was really nice and light. This definitely took a few minutes. And then I added the powdered sugar in 3 to 5 stages. Yeah, literally stop adding the sugar once you feel like your cream has a nice and smooth and spreadable texture. Okay, now on to decorating. Start with the in-between layers, creating a little bit of height. This was my first coat. I put the cake into the fridge and then I took a small amount of the frosting and then added a bit of purple food coloring to it. I wanted it to be, you know, nice and lavendery. Then I did a second coat of the white, which almost looked too pretty to ruin it, but I went in anyway because I wanted this to resemble the idea of lavender haze, lavender smoke. So I was purposefully being messy with this. Let's just say that. Last but not least, I added the sugar pearls to bejewel our cake. And that was it. I made this cake for my at-home book launch party celebration. Yeah, it was super fun. Anyway, the cake was a dream and a half. So good, so satisfying to eat. And that concludes this list of dessert recipes, loosely based on words in songs I like. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. End up recreating anything, share a photo on your Instagram story, tag me. I need to see your recreations. Also, let me know in the comments which artists or songs I should feature in the future. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. Thank you also for all the love on the book. It's so undescribable, undescribable, just seeing you guys react to the book, and I still have not fully processed that is currently happening. Anyway, talk to you soon. Bye!
Now it's getting dark and the sky looks sticky, more like black treacle than tar. Black treacle, somebody told the stars and I'm coming up tonight. So they find a place to hide.